Imagine standing in a hospital delivery room, staring down at a baby everyone expects you to call your own. Except you know it isn't yours. That was me. And when my wife begged me to sign the birth certificate, I told her no. Welcome to Amelia's Stories. Stay with me because the twists and truths in this story will take you through love, betrayal, and choices that change everything. If you're new here, don't forget to share where you're listening from and subscribe for more real-life experiences that hit close to home. My name is Mark Johnson, I'm 33 years old, and for 6 years I was married to Emily Johnson, a 31-year-old nurse. From the outside we looked like the perfect couple. Steady jobs, a nice home, the kind of marriage people admired. I work in construction management, and Emily always seemed proud to tell others about the life we were building together. But behind closed doors, small cracks began to show long before the delivery room moment that turned my world upside down. I couldn't always put my finger on it, but things didn't feel the same. Emily grew distant at times, spending more late nights at work and brushing off little questions with excuses that sounded reasonable enough. I told myself it was stress or maybe the demands of her job. I tried to ignore the uneasiness creeping in. But deep down, something inside me already knew the truth was coming, and it wasn't going to be good. When Emily told me she was pregnant, I felt like the luckiest man alive. I'd always wanted to be a father, and hearing those words filled me with pride and excitement. I hugged her tightly, imagining the family we were about to start. For a while it felt like everything was finally falling into place. But soon little things began to unsettle me. Emily started working odd hours at the hospital, coming home later than usual, often too tired to talk. I noticed how she kept her phone close, even in the bathroom, and how her laughter on the other end of a call would suddenly stop the moment I entered the room. When I asked about it, she brushed me off with a quick explanation about coworkers or hospital emergencies. At home she seemed less interested in being close to me. I chalked it up to the pregnancy, telling myself her body and mind were adjusting. Still, it stung every time she pulled away when I reached for her hand or leaned in for a kiss. Yet, Emily never missed a chance to tell me how amazing I would be as a father. She'd smile, pat my chest and say, "You're going to be the best dad." I just know it. Her words should have reassured me, but instead they felt almost too rehearsed, too forced. That's when the first flicker of doubt entered my mind. I pushed it down, refusing to believe anything could be wrong. As the weeks passed, the warmth between Emily and me seemed to fade little by little. She no longer reached for my hand while we sat on the couch, and nights that used to end with us curled up together now ended with her rolling over, pretending to be asleep. I told myself it was just the pregnancy making her tired, but deep down, it felt like she was pulling away from me. One evening, I walked past the bedroom door and heard her voice. She was on the phone laughing softly. It wasn't just a laugh, it was the kind of playful tone I hadn't heard from her in months, light and warm, almost flirty. My chest tightened. I stood there for a moment, frozen, before stepping inside. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. Her face changed instantly. The smile vanished and she snapped, "Why are you listening in on me? You're acting paranoid." She shoved her phone into her pocket like it was something private I had no right to question. I wanted to push harder, but her anger was sharp and I didn't want to start another fight. I backed down, muttering something about just being curious. But in my head the moment played over and over. The laughter, the defensiveness, the way she hid her phone. I didn't forget any of it. I started keeping quiet mental notes, small red flags that were piling up fast. Something wasn't right and I knew it. The night Emily went into labor, I grabbed my keys and rushed to the hospital, heart racing with nerves and excitement. This was supposed to be the biggest moment of our lives, the moment we became parents. I held her hand through the contractions, whispering encouragement, trying to steady both of us as the hours dragged on. Finally, the baby's first cries filled the room. Little girl. I should have been overwhelmed with joy, but the instant I saw her, something inside me dropped. Her features were undeniable. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, nothing that matched me at all. My chest tightened and the excitement drained out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. The nurse smiled warmly and handed me a clipboard with the birth certificate paperwork. "Dad, you can fill this out whenever you're ready." I looked over at Emily. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate, silently begging me to go along, to just sign and pretend. I froze, staring at the tiny baby who wasn't mine. My hand shook, but I set the pen down. "I can't," I said firmly, my voice low but steady. Emily's face crumpled instantly. She burst into tears, sobbing loudly, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Nurses rushed to comfort her, asking what was wrong. But I just stood there, my decision made, the weight of betrayal heavy in my chest. I wasn't going to claim a child that wasn't mine. After the chaos in the delivery room, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Once the nurses stepped out, I turned to Emily, my voice sharp but trembling. Tell me the truth. Who's the father? At first, she shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mark, please don't do this right now, she whispered. But I pressed harder, demanding answers I already dreaded hearing. Finally, her shoulders collapsed and she let out a sob that chilled me. It's not yours, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I've been seeing someone. Dr. Ryan Miller. The name hit me like a punch. A doctor at the same hospital where she worked. Suddenly, all the late shifts, the laughter on the phone, the secrecy, it all lined up too perfectly. My throat felt tight and my chest burned as the reality sank in. The baby I had been preparing my heart for wasn't mine. The woman I had trusted more than anyone had betrayed me in the worst way. Emily reached for my hand, desperate. Mark, please. I made a mistake, but we can get through this. You've always wanted to be a dad. You can still raise her even if she's not yours. I pulled back, stunned at how she could even suggest that. My world had shattered in a single moment and all I could do was sit there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, realizing everything between us had been built on lies. I couldn't stay another minute in that hospital. The weight of what Emily had confessed was too much. I left without looking back and drove straight to my younger brother Daniel's apartment. He opened the door, confused at first, but one look at me and he knew something was terribly wrong. I dropped onto his couch, the shock still fresh, and finally told him everything. The emotions came in waves. Rage so strong my hands shook, heartbreak that made it hard to breathe, and humiliation that burned in my chest. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of loyalty, and in the end I was nothing more than a fool in her story. When my parents found out, they were stunned. My mom's face turned red with fury, her voice trembling as she said, "How could she do this to you?" My dad stayed quiet, but the disappointment in his eyes spoke louder than words. Meanwhile, Emily wouldn't stop calling. My phone buzzed constantly with her name on the screen. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she begged, saying over and over, "It was just a mistake, Mark. Please don't throw us away." But every time I thought about her words, I saw the baby's face. I remembered the way she had lied with such ease while I built my entire life around her. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had destroyed the family we were supposed to have. And the worst part was, there was no undoing it. The longer I sat with the truth, the clearer my mind became. I realized exploding in anger or seeking petty revenge would only drag me down. If Emily had chosen to betray me, then I needed to protect myself and make sure her choices didn't ruin my future. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. My voice was steady, though inside I was still shattered. Divorce papers were drawn up quickly, and I insisted that a paternity test be included in the filings. I didn't need the results to know, but I wanted it in black and white, something no one could dispute later. Most importantly, I made sure the birth certificate remained blank where my name should have been. That one signature could tie me to a child that wasn't mine for the rest of my life, and I refused to give Emily the chance to pull me into that trap. While the paperwork moved forward, I quietly began gathering evidence of her affair. Messages, phone records, work schedules, anything that connected her to Ryan Miller. I didn't plan on using it to humiliate her, but I knew leverage mattered in situations like this. He tried to fight dirty, I wanted to be ready. Taking these steps gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time since that delivery room, I wasn't just reacting, I was setting the course. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of my way out. Emily wouldn't stop reaching out. Her calls, her messages, all carried the same desperate plea. We can move past this. We can fix it. Eventually, I agreed to meet her, not because I believed her words but because I needed closure. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. She looked worn down, her eyes red from crying. "Mark, please," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "We can rebuild. You've always wanted to be a dad. This doesn't have to change anything." I pulled my hand back and took a deep breath. My voice was calm, colder than I'd ever spoken to her. "Emily, I know everything. The late nights, the phone calls, the lies. The baby isn't mine and I will not raise another man's child. The divorce papers are already in motion." Her expression cracked. The tears returned, but this time they didn't last. Her sorrow twisted quickly into fury. "You're heartless," she spat. "After everything we've been through, you're just walking away? You're not even giving us a chance." I stood, refusing to let her words sink into me. For years she had been the one with power. Her smile, her touch, her promises. But now the roles had shifted. I looked at her one last time, steady and sure. "You made this choice, not me. Then I walked out, leaving her behind in that cafe. For the first time in months, I felt stronger, lighter, as if I had finally reclaimed my life. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Within months, it was finalized, and just like that, 6 years of marriage were reduced to paperwork. Emily was granted custody of the baby, but I was free of any responsibility. Ryan, the man she'd gambled everything on, wanted no part of her or the child once the truth was out. She was left carrying the weight of her choices, struggling financially while juggling work and motherhood alone. As for me, I chose a different path. I started therapy, something I never thought I'd need, but it helped me unpack the anger and betrayal I'd been carrying. Piece by piece, I began to rebuild myself. I reconnected with old friends I had drifted from during my marriage, and it felt good to have laughter and support back in my life. I even dusted off hobbies I hadn't touched in years, fixing up cars in my garage, long hikes on weekends, and evenings spent reading instead of arguing or waiting for Emily to come home. Slowly I felt the fog lifting. Dating came later. I approached it cautiously, knowing how deep the wounds still were. I wasn't looking for perfection, just honesty. Every step felt tentative but also hopeful. The scar of betrayal was still there, no doubt, but alongside it was something else: freedom. For the first time in a long time, my life felt like mine again, and that alone was worth everything I had lost. Looking back now, I realize that the single most important choice I ever made was in that delivery room, the moment I refused to sign the birth certificate. At the time, my heart was breaking, but deep down I knew it was the only way to protect myself. If I had given in to guilt or pity, I'd still be tied to a life built on lies. Walking away was painful, but it was also the beginning of my freedom. Yes, Emily betrayed me in the worst way possible. She took the future we had planned and shattered it for the sake of a fling. But while she's left struggling with the consequences of her choices, I've found something she no longer has: peace. I'm proud that I stood my ground, proud that I refused to let her drag me into a responsibility that was never mine. Sometimes the memories sting. The excitement I once felt about becoming a father, the trust one gave so freely, but they don't control me anymore. I've built a new life, stronger and clearer than before. In the end, it wasn't just about refusing to sign a piece of paper. It was about refusing to let betrayal define who I am. Emily is the one living with regret, while I walk forward with lessons that made me stronger. It's a cold kind of justice, maybe even bittersweet, but it's mine. And I wouldn't change the decision that saved my life.